As we're all aware, most of the parameters in Attache and Clearview are range-based. That is, we select the first and the last entry to run the report by. We'll be constructing a range parameter throughout the course to keep the content familiar. As you can see, each parameter has a tick box, a field for the first entry, and one for the last entry. Don't forget that behind the scenes there's also SQL that powers the parameters. So each range parameter has the following: a tick box, a space for us to select the first entry, and a space for us to select the last entry, as well as some SQL under the bonnet. The tick box. The tick box represents a choice for us. In this case, the choice is, do you want to use this parameter, yes or no? The tick box is essentially a bit switch, and a bit switch is that infamous concept of ones and zeros that many may know, but few will understand at this point. A bit switch is nothing more than a mechanism in computing that swaps between two different options. For instance, on or off, yes or no, true or false, and of course the iconic 1 or 0. The first and last entries. The first and last entries are the basis for those bothersome conditions that are unknown to us at the time that we write the report, as they are only defined when someone actually goes and runs the report. To cope with this unknown, we elect to use placeholders in our reports. Placeholders essentially let us say to our report, I don't care what gets chosen when this report is run, here's what you do to whatever appears. Whatever the person running the report chooses should replace these placeholders. Let's have a look at how we create these components before scripting them into our report. To create the components, change over to the Reports Parameters tab and add them to the table. We want 3 entries. For our index, you can start them at 1 and have them increment. For the names, we want to give all 3 of our components the same name, but each one will have their own prefix. I'm just going to call my parameters parameter. For the checkbox, the prefix is RNG, and then the parameter name. For the first entry placeholder, the prefix is FST, and for the last placeholder, it's LST. What these prefixes do is they help the report designer identify that the 3 components are parts of the same parameter. So for example, if you were to untick the checkbox, it will grey out the first and last entries. This isn't strictly required to make the parameter work, but it goes a long way to making your report look polished and refined. Next is the type. We want our checkbox to be a bit, and we want our 2 placeholders to be text. Take note that you do have other choices here. Description is how each component is labeled when you run the report, so make sure each one is written in plain English. For this example, I'll call it employee parameter. For my first entry, it will be first employee, and for my last, it will be last employee. Format isn't applicable here. It's used to specify the format that items will appear in. For example, if we were making a date-based parameter, the format could be short date or long date. For this example, we'll leave them blank. Default will let you pre-fill the components with information. For example, if I pick ADEJ here, Joe Adelino will be chosen as the parameter even before the user has selected anything. Lookup type allows you to specify the list of items that a user can choose from when pressing F2 to search as they enter the parameters. There are 2 types. The first type is an SQL query, table/query, And the second type is just a generic list of items, value list. I'll choose one of each to demonstrate how they work. The lookup table / query is where you define what appears on the lookup list based on the lookup type that we chose. If you chose SQL query, you can enter a simple select statement. For example, let's select the employee code and the employee name from the employee master file, and I'm going to have it ordered in ascending order based on the employee code. If you chose list, you simply enter all of the items you want to make available, with each item separated by a semicolon. For example, I'll enter apple, banana, coconut, dinosaur. Refresh key lets you specify a table to refresh when the parameter interacts with the data. Since we're only working with the employee master file in this example, I'll choose it for all three components. Finally, column width lets you specify how wide the parameter columns will be during lookup. These are defined in pixels. Next, I'm going to write a simple SQL statement. We'll look at the employee codes and the employees' names. And I'm going to use the default SQL script to temporarily bring the parameter to life to demonstrate everything we've just done. I'll be going through how to manually write the SQL script shortly afterwards. Don't forget to change the generic data fields to real data fields. Just like before, I'll quickly add in some fields so that we can have a look at the report and see the parameters we just created in action. Now when I go to preview the report, you'll notice that without the checkbox being ticked, the two fields are not active and we can't actually use them. As mentioned previously, this is due to giving them all the same name with the various prefixes. When the box is ticked, the two fields are now active. For the first employee, you can see it's been pre-filled with Joe Adelino, and when we do a lookup, we get a list of all of our employees. By comparison, if we do a lookup on the last employee, we see the 4 items we manually entered into the list: apple, banana, coconut, and dinosaur. Now this is a range parameter as we mentioned, so when I select bar J and car R and generate the report, it should give me my details listed, but only for members between Jenny Barron and Rachel Carroll, as you can see on screen. Let's recap what we've just gone through. Index is a unique ID number and doesn't do much for us as far as we're concerned. It's more for the program. The name is what we want to call the components from a technical point of view. We want to give all components of the same parameter the same name combined with the 3 prefixes RNG, FST, and LST. The type lets us choose what type of data, numerical, text, bit, date, and so on, which our component will take on. Description is the label that will appear when the report is run. We want to use plain English here to make the report as clear as possible. Format allows you to specify the format based on what type you selected. For instance, date could be short or long. Default is used to pre-fill the component with a specific entry. The lookup type allows you to decide whether you want the lookup to be created using a simple select clause, or if you'd prefer specifying specific items to fill the list with. The lookup table or query is where you enter the select statement or the list, depending on which type you selected above. Items in a list should be delimited using semicolons. Refresh allows us to specify which tables are refreshed when the parameter is interacting with the database. Finally, the column width allows you to specify the width of the lookup table when they appear on screen.